That's good? Okay, cool. Thanks everyone. Just grab a seat. The food is still gonna be here, don't worry. Alright, thanks everyone for joining. There's some seats here. If you, okay, it feels like they all got their spots. Cool. Alright, thanks everyone for coming. This is the first meetup again from COVID. I'm really glad to have everyone here tonight. Even though it's a small group, it's still good to be able to connect and really talk to people and not just seeing on the screen. So tonight we have some amazing speaker, Morgan and Danny, who used to work for Raw Studio, by the way. And I would like to just share some of the social media. I guess feel free to follow us, and we have actually a Facebook group. If you're not there yet, Sydney Designer Meetup group. And as you know, we have some stickers. Everyone has a sticker, and let's raise your hand if you're red. All right, a lot of people. A lot of designers looking for jobs, that's good. Now the tricky one is the green one. Raise your hand, greens. Oh my god. Okay, this one. Oh, there's one over there, okay. Don't rush to them, okay? We're still people, right? And we have the yellow one, which is just to hang out. Yeah, cool, thanks. So tonight's talk, I think it's a really good one. Product design. For startup versus agency versus corporate. A lot of junior, I guess, designer who start the industry wants to know what's the difference and wants to where do I start? Startup, agency, corporate. Just to gauge, how many of you are really junior or just starting up the design? Don't be shy. Okay, cool. That's a lot of people. That's good then. So I'll get Danny to talk. He's been working at, he's now senior product designer at WooliesX, and he was working at Raw Studio before, so he has a good understanding of agency, big corporate, and then even startup before. So Danny, come on board.
Great, awesome. Well, yeah, thanks a lot to Philippe at Raw Studio. As you mentioned, worked there. It was a great company, got a lot of experience seeing what it was like in a small agency. It's probably a bit bigger now. But yeah, so I have, first of all, put a quote here, because it wouldn't be a TED Talk without a quote at the start. So, work is going to fill a large part of your life. Do what you believe is great work, and the only way to do great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it, keep looking. So I thought that last part definitely resonates with me. I've worked at a bunch of different companies now. You can see it does even more before that. But yeah, I've kind of been hopping around companies and very lucky to have been able to sort of accelerate my career by doing that. And after about 5-6 years now in the sort of UX space, I'm a senior product designer at Woolies, which I'm really loving, and it's a really great team there. It's a fun place, and I'm super grateful to have a bit of education in sort of marketing and UX stuff as well. So what we're talking about tonight is startups, agencies, corporates, what it's like to be a product designer there, what the sort of mindset is that you want to apply to your work that I've found to be beneficial, and also the type of process that you might be doing there, and a bit about the structure of these types of companies as well. So yeah, some definitions to kick it off. Startups, I understand them to be sort of innovative businesses. They've got sort of structures that may be new and that are helping them to sort of disrupt industries. That's really what it's all about, creating a sort of new, innovative product or business that can sort of disrupt and really quickly occupy market share. That's typically the plan for startups. So agencies are service-based companies where it's a matter of talented people coming together and working with various clients, providing a lot of value and great service to these clients. Then you have corporates, which I'm sure you're more familiar with, which are these large companies existing, customer bases, and they're typically pretty big. So startups. A startup is a company that is confused about, one, what its product is, two, who its customers are, and three, how to make money. So fairly accurate quote from what I've found. A lot of startup founders think they know what they want to do. They get really excited about it, get everybody on board, because that's what great founders do. They align everybody, bring them together to this mission, and then they have a really awkward conversation and they say, look guys, we're actually going to change the mission, we're going over here, come with me. A lot of change in startups. These aspects of a mindset might help you sort of navigate that environment where priorities shift very often. So if you are steadily going along, building up a customer base, and then your analytics team realize that, oh shit, over the last month we've had a decrease of people converting, then your company may shift its entire focus to that sort of funnel and converting more people. And you can imagine this happens if something is not working out with the amount of value that a customer brings to the business, then you might need to shift your focus and focus on engagement and increasing kind of lifetime value of the customer. Those are just two examples. So generalists work really well in startups. Basically, you'll be wearing a lot of different hats, and as a product designer or a UX designer, I'm sure there's a lot of different skill sets in this room. There may even be some sort of graphic designers, and startups sort of really appreciate people who bring a lot to the table, whether that's a varied skill set or whether that's just kind of the willingness to jump in and try to solve a problem at hand. So definitely, if you're looking to get into the startup world, sort of embrace technology, learning more about that, embrace marketing, branding, all these sort of different elements. And you'll also, whoops, great. Just fix this up. Yeah, that should come back. You want to hustle, but you want to be smart about it, otherwise you'll just burn yourself out. Startups are all different. The larger ones, as they become more successful, raise more money, the hustle gets a lot easier, but in those early stages, you'll probably be working quite a bit. So just try to work smart, try to automate things if you can, speak with other technical people. If you realize that a process is very manual, maybe they can automate that. Just try to make your life easier. Invest a bit of time up front to try to make a process easier for you the next 10 times that you do it or so. But yeah, there's really big startups out there that raise millions of dollars and then kind of lose sight of that hustle. That also happens. Anyway, structure of a startup. I'm an illustrator, so this is a very great drawing, as you can see. These diagrams that I'll show you throughout this is just like what my brain is thinking, and definitely don't go and replicate this and show other people that you know what a startup structure is, because I've just made this up purposefully to try to give you guys a unique perspective. But yeah, there's tons of organizational charts out there that you can look up. Basically, startups are quite horizontal in structure, so you can collaborate with a lot of different people. Like, you might be working directly with the CEO there, or you might be working with the CTO, Chief Technology Officer, or the head of marketing. And as a product designer, or UX designer, or graphic designer, you could find yourself working on a whole bunch of different tasks, whether it's the app or the website, and yeah, you just be doing kind of a variety of different things. So a decent sized startup, if they start to consider how to break up the work, they may have sort of an app team who owns that area of things, and then maybe like a website team who owns the website. And this is going to be drastically different to how a corporate is structured. So yeah, touching on what I mentioned before, the founders of the company, the CEOs, that sort of thing, you might actually be working with them, and they might be the head of design, or they might be the head of growth, or the head of technology, and in addition to their responsibilities of growing the company and trying to bring in more capital and raise, they might also be doing the work themselves as well. So really great environments if you're wanting to learn what's involved in the raw process of building a company, and being alongside those really hyper-driven people that are looking to kind of create something from scratch and make it into a massive successful company. So these types of skills are, obviously outside the domain of design. So by working in a startup, you might come in as a really passionate sort of product designer and leave with this really broad understanding of all the other sort of business functions. So a startup design process, you're kind of looking at something that is pretty lean. So you may want to do some light research, speak to a couple of users, create some prototypes, validate those prototypes with people, get it into the UI design stage of things, and then sort of hand it off to your developers. And not all startups are the same, and not all projects within startups are the same. So at some points, you might just have to jump straight to UI because there's a great opportunity to onboard a new client and they want to see a landing page, or rather, you want to break into a new niche, and a potential investor is interested in that niche, then there's probably no time to do any research there. So whip up that landing page, go straight to UI, just get it done. That's the kind of process and mindset that you might need to apply at times. Whereas other times, you might skip a couple steps and realize that there's a great opportunity. There might be a sense of a good opportunity in a particular niche. So you as a UX, UI designer have some knowledge of research, conduct that research, and then kind of to try to get market share quickly, you might go straight to development, because potentially you're working alongside developers who can, are really talented and can just take this this knowledge of what is important to build and go ahead and build it without necessarily needing those the UI design and everything like that. So it's really different depending on the company. Okay, agencies. So the key to great ideas is not having them, it's executing them. And great ideas come from problems. As designers, we call problems briefs, and we call reactions to problems concepts. So I think this is really relevant for agencies because it is very much about execution. Of course, you're coming up with creative ideas, you're doing the UX process, but you're also looking to progress the project forwards and completing it, because that is really what the game is about doing good work, about being sure about the process that you're using, but ultimately kind of wrapping up that project, moving on to the next project. So the mindset, service is everything. People skills and presenting skills are a must. Not really, but they are if you want to be good at your job and move your way up. But if you really love sitting behind a computer and sort of crafting away, then you don't need to necessarily get good at presenting skills, but I would highly recommend that you do, because it will definitely help you in your career. So people, yeah, Philippe's taking note of that point. So people work with agencies for the service as much as they do the problem solving. I've found this is also the case for freelance work. People want the problem solved, but they also want familiarity, and they want to know that it's going to be a smooth process. So the service side of things, helping people through that journey and being really, nice and friendly while doing so, and also solving the problem. The next time that company sort of incurs a need for a design, they're going to go straight to you because they just have these positive associations to the work that you've done. Even though, maybe there's companies out there who can ultimately come up with a way better solution, but they lack the sort of ability to bring the client along through that journey. The designers that can do both are going to be, higher value. So, yeah, that ties into having, a good relationship with your clients. Will make them happy clients. They'll be less harsh on you, less, determined to get that deadline hit, and ultimately you'll have a better day-to-day kind of work life. So yeah, creativity is currency, and just wanted to use a bit of alliteration there, but the ability to produce kind of a lot of different concepts quite quickly is something that's really valued in an agency, and coming up with ideas on the fly, collaborating with people in a creative manner, and sort of pushing the boundaries. These things that help the company build up a impressive portfolio of work, and that's another reason this creativity piece is another reason why companies seek out agencies. A lot of large corporates, they may have teams of designers and developers, and they're working on individual projects, but the members of those teams and these companies, they're so narrowed in on these problems that they've been working on solving for a long time that potentially they lose that desire to be creative. So agencies kind of will still be utilized by these large companies. These large companies will reach out to get this very creative work done and this blue sky thinking piece created. So yeah, it's important that you don't get too down into the weeds when you're in an agency. If somebody is coming to you for a concept, and that you rather push yourself to explore, various different creative solutions, design solutions. So get to yes. I think this is one of the most important points if you are a freelancer, and if you're also sort of very tied into the agency's success, which you should be. It's, as I mentioned before, really about sort of getting that project complete, getting that client on boards, and ultimately moving on to the next project and the next project, so that you can, and while you're doing this, you want to be doing the best job as you can, but really keeping in mind that this is about sort of progressing and building and designing and creating and finishing those pieces of work, rather than sort of spending too long in the ideation and discovery phase, and not spending too long trying to ensure that you're focused on the perfect problem. It's really about sort of identifying a problem, moving to a solution, validating that, and then shipping and repeating. So the book Design Sprint by AJ and Smart, actually it's by Jake Knapp, and AJ and Smart do some tutorials about that. So Design Sprint, if you guys haven't heard about that, check it out, or it's a really good read. So the structure at agencies, so these are people, these are your clients, and this is your team. Sure, you could work that out yourself. So the team, you're going to be wanting to collaborate a lot with all members in the team. Hopefully you're in an agency environment where that's encouraged. I know certainly at Raw Studio it was, and this will help to create a diverse lot of ideas, and then you'll have members who are involved in liaising and working with clients. Maybe one member works with one client, or maybe some members work with multiple clients, and then so these clients have their own sort of customer bases, and that's kind of how it works. So we've already talked about that. Some agencies will place you in-house at a different company. So this has happened to me in the past, and it happens to a lot of people. It's when your agency is approached by a corporate or a startup, and they say, yeah, we can do a 3-month project, and we would like 1 or 2 people to come in-house and work side along our team. And that's great for you as a designer within an agency to have that opportunity to do that. You will just want to look out for some warning signs. If you're spending too long in-house at a different company, then you've been through the recruiting process, but instead of using a recruiter, you've used the agency, and maybe the agency will be taking a bit of a clip of that. But this is typically a pretty rare thing to happen. But myself, I was working for an agency where I really enjoyed it, and then I was placed into a startup, kind of a large startup, and really enjoyed that as well, and ended up spending about a year or over a year in this startup while still associated to the agency. So throughout that time, the agency was taking really healthy kind of clip of the salary that the startup was paying for that role. So I also was unable to sort of progress up the startups company, even though I felt like I was a bit of a member of the team there because I had spent so much time there. But yeah, no regrets. It was, I stayed there for a year plus because it was a great setup. So learned a lot, but just keep an eye out for it. Cool. So design in agencies. The design process differs really greatly depending on the client's briefs. So some companies may want their funnel optimized, or maybe they want a rebrand or an entire MVP app. So the process that you'll use will be kind of different depending on the brief. So this is probably the most common way that agencies work. Some agencies do have a dedicated process that they run through with every client, and they sell sort of like a productized process where if you're working with the agency, they run a 5-day sprint, and then this is what you get at the end of that. But that's a bit rarer than sort of being this sort of a reactionary design process approach where you're getting briefs and you're accommodating to those briefs. So some practical skills that you can sharpen to kind of work well in this environment are rapid concept creation, sort of spoke to that before, negotiation of product scope. So this is probably more so for project managers, but I think it's also really important for product designers and UX, UI designers. As you become more competent, you'll be involved in a lot of conversations with clients, and you might find that clients, asking for that extra change or that one more iteration on the design, and you'll want to kind of just say, okay, yes, I can do that for you. I'll wrap that up for you. But you really need to kind of understand what's in the best interest of the company that you work for, and that isn't always that you do that extra edit. So there is potentially a need to sort of have these negotiation skills. Obviously, there may be project managers, or there may be the agency founders who can help you out, and they'll sort of jump in if you identify that something is taking too long. But to sort of have that sensibility of, is something, are a client asking for a bit too much, and sort of navigating those conversations. It's not something that's in the job description of working as a designer in an agency, but it's a good skill set that probably like senior product and UX designers have. So design system customization and use is something that I would think the best agencies are doing. They're utilizing sort of existing design systems or existing components, and they're customizing that to their clients' brands and to their clients' needs. And this is a great way to be efficient as an agency, rather than sort of reinventing the wheel every time that you work on a client project. So Raw Studio, for instance, has a pretty thorough design system and is really highly customizable, and that is used for many of the client. Maybe this is confidential information, giving away Philippe's all his secrets.
Too late.
Yeah, you can also buy that online. Cool. Kind of things that I think have helped me is being a great storyteller. It's a skill that everybody will constantly learn over their careers. If you are sort of involved in working with different stakeholders and working with different clients, then it's something to try to improve at, because it really helps with just so many aspects of your day-to-day work life and the success of the business, to kind of be able to effectively articulate why something is important and why something should get to yes, should get that approval, will save you potentially a lot of unnecessary work. There's some, not to harp on about storytelling too much, but there are some sort of patterns in stories that seem to be more effective and seem to really resonate with people. So recommend looking into that and trying to look into sort of the hero's journey and these sort of really prominent storytelling techniques. Cool, so always be learning. I think this is a super important piece that I don't need to even touch on, because all of you are here right now at an event. You came to learn, so fantastic. Gold stars for everybody. The top right one, keep it fun and do the thing. So keep it light, keep it fun, just try to create a positive environment for yourself, for your own sanity and for the sanity of people around you, and do the thing. Just do the work. Sometimes you gotta put your head down, get it done. Cool, and always be kind and helpful. Everybody likes people that are kind and helpful. Corporates. Business is a marathon, and most of society thinks it's a sprint. So definitely resonate with that first part, business being a marathon. In a large corporate, that's definitely the case. There are a lot of stakeholders, there's a lot of decision makers. Projects may take a long time to come to completion. Some projects that you could spend, potentially a year on might not even make it into the final product. If you imagine Google, the homepage of Google, it hasn't changed since the 90s, and there's probably a couple thousand people working on that. There's probably like 100 designers trying to get their change onto that homepage, and it hasn't. Same with Facebook's homepage, or rather the sort of sign-up page. That stayed the same for like 10 years or something like that. They hardly changed it. They updated the UI just ever so slightly, and I'm sure that they have an entire team, maybe multiple, for that particular project. So just be prepared to try to make these incremental improvements in a sort of gradual process. So mindset, nurture relationships. I think this is the most important point for corporates throughout this entire sort of presentation, is relationships. The people that are really important, whether you like it or not. That is a kind of reality of working in a large organization with a lot of stakeholders. You want to have good relationships with kind of as many people, allow other people to share their mindsets, and share their ideas, so that you can uncover things that you wouldn't have thought about otherwise. So align on intention. I think this is another pretty important point. Stakeholder management in corporates is something that you'll encounter a lot, and you'll encounter a lot of different personalities and a lot of different people's motivations and intentions. So different departments, you might have marketing, you might have brands as a department, then you have research, then you have sort of business analysts, all these different members of a team. As you design something, you'll sort of have to interact with them and communicate your design to these different members, and you can imagine that everybody has their own sort of motivations and their own intentions for what they want to get out of a product, and it's really about kind of understanding where they're coming from. An example might be brands saying, well, we want to sort of represent our colors and our logo and that sort of thing, and just trying to dig down into why are they really wanting to do that. So it might take a step back. The department might come to you and say, you need to make that logo bigger and you need to add more green. And instead of having a conversation about, well, the pixel size takes up too much screen real estate, and on a responsive device, it's that's too much in the weeds. You really want to align on the intention. What is the brand trying to do? Why are they making those suggestions? And that might be, well, we're concerned that people are using the platform and they don't even know what brand it's coming from. It's that is a very different conversation to the conversation about why you can't increase the pixel size, or why the shade of color they recommended doesn't match the brand guideline. So instead of focusing in those finer details, you can say, well, okay, so you want to have brand awareness. So we can go through a user testing process and try to determine if people are, in fact, missing the fact that the brand is being represented. And then shifting the conversation around kind of what their high-level kind of intention is, what their why is, rather than having arguments about logo size. So structure in corporates, another very great drawing. We have these different levels, and you may have, this is potentially a project lead, and then, different managers below them. Below them is different squad leads, and then you potentially have these squads, and each sort of squad might be working on a specific feature of a product, and then the entire kind of group of squads potentially are working on sort of one initiative or one function. So this entire group of people might actually be working on the sign-up process for the website, and that sign-up process is just one feature amongst many different features. Maybe there's also the dashboard, which has its own sort of entire team working on it. And maybe this kind of sign-up process is a multi-step funnel, and then sort of different sections maybe there's an ID upload section, and that's kind of taken care of by a smaller team. And you can imagine, Facebook, the app, there's only so much functions and things that you can do, but the team size there is probably massive, so I would assume that they have a similar structure. So when designing in corporates, objective facts are really, really valuable. So I was having a conversation about this before. If you're looking to sort of get into that UX research space and sort of the UX design side of things, then you really want to be always speaking to facts and speaking to research and speaking to data when you're justifying your decisions. It will just help you so much in standing out as a credible source of, somebody who is highly qualified to be influencing the design is somebody who has a good knowledge of the factual evidence and the objective kind of truth in whatever form that might be, whether it's qualitative user testing that was done and sort of insights derived from that qualitative user testing, or if it's sort of a quantitative survey where a couple hundred people were interviewed and you sort of have some graphs outputted from that, then in your conversations about when presenting your design solutions, if you have that up your sleeve and if you can point to that, that'll really help you kind of get things across the line. And that's really what you should be doing as sort of a senior or any sort of designer really, any sort of like product or UX designer in a corporate company. So there's lots of rituals, lots of meetings. That's just something that is a reality with the amount of people there. And specialists get quite a bit of awareness. So there's probably a lot of us like myself that are generalists and really enjoy kind of all the aspects of the design process, and that's totally cool. That's like, as an individual, going to allow you to work on a lot of different things and have a lot of variety in your day-to-day. But if you kind of want to be known in the company, then being a specialist is a really great way to do that, because you'll be the go-to person. So this is a bit of a crazy slide, but this is a design process that a lot of corporates use, and we have the sort of amount of work is shown by the sort of volume and the size of these triangles, and it just pretty much talks to there being a heavy research phase and then a heavy kind of design phase, and within this there's different sort of tools that you can use, stakeholder interviews, sort of looking at the business analysis and all these different things. So anyway, you can hit me up later and I can send that to you. So great, Morgan. I'll just briefly intro Morgan, senior consultant in design, and all-round knowledgeable, great guy on what the differences are. He could do this himself. Come on,
super insightful, and thank you for the intro there. That was also great. I'm Morgan. I forgot to get my name tag at the beginning. But yeah, I'm a senior consultant at a digital recruitment agency called Sustain Digital. I've been recruiting for design for the last 6 years. Back in London for 5 of those, and I've been over in Sydney for a year. So I feel very lucky to be here. I feel like I've dodged a bit of a bullet with COVID back home. So thank you for having me. I think a couple of the points that I have will probably touch on some similar ones to Dan as well, but hopefully I can give a bit of a different side to it from a recruitment standpoint. So we'll start with corporate. So I think the opportunity working with a corporate is really being able to commit to one brand and one product. So in your search, you can be really selective about the company or the product you're going to be working on. And I think in a lot of ways that's a massive driver of people in their search, because you can choose a company or a product that really aligns with your passions and your values. I think being able to immerse yourself in one brand is something that people do really seek out nowadays as well. And I think also being able to be certain that you can see through multiple iterations or developments of the same product over a longer period of time suits some designers as well. I think in a corporate, as Dan mentioned earlier, they have much more of a mature structure and process there. So the teams will be larger, there'll be more of a hierarchy there. The projects are less likely to pivot at short notice as well. It's a massive opportunity, especially if you're kind of earlier on in your career, I think, because you'll have lots of senior people which you can be pulling on at any one time, which I think is a massive benefit if you have seniors like Dan around you, and you can pull them aside and be like, I love what you did there, or can you tell me how I might be able to improve some of my work that I'm doing here as well. So collaboration with many disciplines. So this certainly isn't exclusive to corporates, but I think there's kind of two facets that I'd say. In that squad model, you can be partnered in smaller agile teams where you'll be working directly side by side with a developer or a product manager or even a data analyst, as you said before. But I think if you do decide to go into a specific sector, I don't know, something maybe finance or fintech, there'll be people there that are finance specialists that you can draw on their knowledge, and that will only help you make a better product at the end for your users. Going on to agencies, I spent a long part of my career recruiting for agencies. I absolutely love recruiting for agencies, and I think for a lot of designers, one of the key drivers to taking towards an agency setup is the variety of companies that you can work from various different sectors. It really appeals to the creatives. The true creatives who want to be, have a lot of kind of variety in their job, and also the variety in projects that you can work on. So, if you're earlier on in your career and you're not quite sure where you want to specialise in, an agency is a fantastic place for you to go because you can get involved in elements of product design or branding or even integrated design in some agencies, and you can be sure that those projects are going to be quite diverse for you. The pace of work is definitely normally faster in an agency. I think sometimes the project timelines can be shorter. You definitely have client deadlines which can add some pressure, and that can be a pro or con depending on the kind of person that you are. I think something to bear in mind with the pace is that it is definitely something that will put you in good stead wherever you decide to take your career. The majority of the roles that I recruit for now will have some form of design task or brief, and they normally will expect you to spend 2 to 4 hours on it. And what they're looking for there is how fast can you work, how can you establish your process, and show what you can do under a pressured amount of time. It's something to bear in mind if that's not an environment you thrive in, but I think, as I said, there's loads of opportunity for learning there, and it will put you in good stead later down the line. So communication with stakeholders, that's important in any organisation. I think, as Dan touched on earlier, it's probably a little bit different, those lines of communication within a corporate or a startup compared to an agency. And I think there is that element of romance within the relationship between the client and the agency. You wanting to sell your idea and your vision for the project. There can sometimes be challenges, and that's negotiating what you feel is best for the project or what maybe they initially envisaged, or maybe deadlines can change, but these are challenges that really will build great skill sets for you going forward in your career, and people really relish the opportunity to do that. Definitely a good environment for learning there. Then startups. So unlike corporates and also agencies, I think they tend to have less defined processes there. So the teams will be cross-disciplined, but they tend to be much leaner. And as Dan said again earlier, you may be expected to wear a few different hats, which is no bad thing. As I said with corporates earlier, I think there is that opportunity to learn. I think if you're joining a really early stage startup and you are earlier on in your career, there can be some challenges there because you don't have necessarily all of the guidance and the structure that you might need in your day-to-day. But on the flip side, sorry mate. On the flip side to that, if you're a more experienced designer or you're kind of pushing further on in your career, it's a massive opportunity for you to go somewhere and really shape a startup. You can help build those design processes from the ground up, and you can take little gems of knowledge from the previous places that you've worked at and establish them there. I think something that's talked about a lot as well is building a design culture as like a senior designer who's moving into a startup. Especially if you're going to be building a team later down the line as the company continues to grow. And also having the opportunity to work on a product is kind of a blank canvas in some cases, and that's not always the case, but sometimes being able to go to a company and not have a design system that you've inherited or a design process there, that can be a real draw for people going over to startups. I know I've covered a few points that Dan had there, but I hope that added a little bit of value. So the next point I want to go on to is really kind of what I'm seeing in the market at the moment with regard to salaries. So this is very broad and general because you need to take these depending on the company, and that can depend on the size or the industry they're in. But I'd say on the whole, juniors are really looking from 60 to 80k, midweights 80 to 100k, 120k, seniors 120 to 150, and lead 150 to 180, and that's base salary. So if you're talking about your salary, make sure does that include your super, or is that just the base? I think with startups, they're not always able to reach the heights of corporate salaries. They tend to have to funnel their funds into product development, and building a customer base is super important for them, and just the day-to-day operational costs. But as I said there, that startups can sometimes offer you shares and equity. And if you've got a long-term vision and you really believe in a startup, that can be super lucrative for you down the line. I think it also shows a real intent of longevity in your role. If a company is building out their team and they're offering you that equity early on, they want you to help grow their business, and they want to reward you for that later down the line. So I think that's definitely something to bear in mind. Agencies, like all of them really, salaries can vary, but you can get really high salaries there. Some maybe aren't so competitive, and that can go for startups and corporates. For me, I think agencies create such a massive opportunity for learning. That diversity of projects is always there for you, and I think the pace is going to put you in a really good place later down the line in your career. I think also the culture there is fantastic. I was really lucky to work at an agency called Havas for a period of time, and I was only there